What's wrong with the world? How many of you have either asked yourself that question or heard somebody else say something similar, even just in this last week? I think we can all see that the world is going mad. Anger, bitterness, resentment, wars, poverty, rudeness, family breakdown, schools struggling to control children, zombified people walking the city centres after taking spice, half the world wasting resources, the other half in desperate need. The world is going mad. Those who ask that question usually have their own answers about what's wrong with the world, and usually have their own answers about what really needs to be done to sort it all out. What does the Bible have to say? What does the Bible say about what is wrong with the world and what is needed in the world today? I think the first thing to note is that actually there's nothing new. We think that what we're seeing is all new and that it's worse now than it ever has been, but actually the truth is it's always been like this. This letter was written 2,000 years ago, and yet it could so easily have been written about Norwich in 2019. Godlessness, wickedness, sexual impurity, worshipping the creatures, not the Creator, evil, greed, depravity, envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice, boastful, disobedience to parents. And all this is just outside the school gates at 3 o'clock. It's been going on for 2,000 years since this was written. There is nothing new about what we're seeing in the world. Where does it all begin? Where does the Bible say is the real cause of all that's going on? Last week I said that the word righteousness, we tend to think of it meaning, doing right things, being righteous in your actions. But in the Bible it means being right with God. It means being in a right relationship with God. And verse 18 onwards of chapter 1 introduces us to the opposite word of righteousness. It's translated in our New International Version translations as wickedness. But it's the counter word to righteousness. It's unrighteousness. It means being in the wrong. It means being in a wrong relationship with God. Verse 18. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against the godlessness and wickedness of men, who suppress the truth by their wickedness. God's anger is at humanity's wrong relationship with him. And people are suppressing the truth and going deeper and deeper into wrong relationships because of their wickedness. It's a spiral. It's starting in a wrong relationship with him, and it leads people further and further and further away from him. And God is angry. God's wrath is being shown at human wickedness. Because as verse 19 points out, what may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain to them. People are in a wrong relationship with God, even though God has shown himself clearly throughout the entire world. As we read earlier from Psalm 19. That the wonder, the beauty of God's creation is clear, it is evident throughout the entire world. the reason the world is living in wickedness, in a wrong relationship with God, actually stems from its refusal to acknowledge what is plain about God. In Norwich in 2019, on the whole, that means refusing to even accept the existence of God. The heavens declare the glory of God. The existence of the earth and the sun and the moon and the stars and the planets prove that there is a creator. The laws of physics say that matter, that's stuff, physical things, cannot be created or destroyed. You cannot create matter. You can change its form. You can mix it with something else to change its type. You can burn it and you think you've destroyed it. You haven't. You've just turned it into tiny, tiny particles that disappear off into the air. That's one of the reasons for global warming. When we burn things, we think they disappear. Actually, they don't. They disappear up into the atmosphere and cause all sorts of problems. You cannot create or destroy stuff. You can only change its form. The laws of physics say that energy cannot be created or destroyed. Energy just changes form. Mostly when we use energy, we create heat. That heat's never lost. Again, it goes up into the atmosphere and it causes warming. Some of it escapes our atmosphere, disappears into the universe, and makes a tiny little pinprick of a dot of difference to the amount of heat that there is in the universe out there. You cannot create or destroy stuff. You cannot create or destroy any energy. Therefore, according to the very laws of physics, the Big Bang could not have happened. It is impossible because it required the spontaneous production of matter and energy. But if we don't believe that the universe spontaneously sprang into existence against all the rules of physics, then we have to believe there's a creator. And that is something that today's society refuses to believe. And so if there's no creator, then, well, we have to believe instead that the universe defied all the laws of physics and just spontaneously sprang into existence. As verse 25 says, we have exchanged the truth of God for a lie. And a lie that should be self-evident to anybody who knows the first basic things about physics. The Big Bang, it's a lie. It could not have happened. It is impossible. But society would rather believe that than admit there's a creator God. At the time that these words were written, people had turned away from worshipping the God of creation, and instead they worshipped idols. Or they worshipped the sun or the sea or a mountain. That they worshipped the very things that God had created, rather than the one who actually created them. To worship something is to make it the highest source of authority. Is to say, this is the thing to which I'm going to look to make sense of the world. This is the thing that I'm going to look to guide me in everything that I do. So what does our society around us worship today? What is the high point, the thing that we say, that is what we look to make sense of the world. That is what we look to guide us in all the decisions that we make. I think it's science, human intellect. That is the greatest authority in the world in which we live today. It's science that is used to decide the origins of the universe and of humanity. It's science that is governing morality. And science effectively is human endeavour. In our society today, we are making that the highest thing, the thing that we look to in all circumstances. We worship it. And so society is worshipping something that God made. Just as much as people worshipping idols at the time of Paul were worshipping a lump of wood that God had made, so today we are worshipping human intellect, which is something that God made, rather than worshipping the Creator. We're denying the truth, and we're believing a lie. And nothing has changed since these words were written. And because human intellect has been elevated to the highest point in our society, we've decided, therefore, there cannot be a creator. And if there's no creator, then there's nobody to say how humans ought to behave. There are no moral absolutes. No absolute, total given rules that we have to stick to. We kind of have to create morality by consensus, and that is going to change as circumstances change. And so every few generations, what is acceptable and what isn't gets totally redefined. Look how morality has changed so abruptly in the last 50 years or so in this country. Things that were once done only in secret and under threat of shame are now publicly celebrated and rejoiced in and encouraged. Do we think it's new? Verse 32, although they know God's righteous decrees that all who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but approve of those who practice them. Isn't that what we see when there are pride parades going through our city today? The whole community coming together to rejoice and to celebrate in something that actually God's word said should not be happening. That is our society. That is the community that we live in today. Denies the Creator, embracing human intellect, straying from the right path that God has set, leading to wickedness, a wrong relationship with God. So how many of us now are sitting quite comfortably and thinking, wow, this is great, we've got it all right, everybody out there outside those doors, they've got it all wrong, we can sit in here and be we can take the moral high ground and sit here a little bit smug. Well, there's something really, really important that we need to grasp about the wickedness of the society that we live in. We look down verses 26 and 27 and we think about the things that are going on in Norwich and we thank God that we're not like those sinners. But we need to keep on looking down. Verse 29, evil, greed, depravity, murder. Well, we can feel a little bit smug at murder, can't we? But we need to keep reading envy. Envy. Can anybody here say they've never felt envious? I certainly can't. Murder. Okay, we felt a little bit smug when I said murder. Jesus said getting angry actually is akin to murder. Have any of us never got angry? Strife, deceit, malice, are we really free of those? Gossips and slanderers are included in here. We don't think of gossip as being that serious. Are we really going to group that together with murder? God's word does. We ever joined in gossip? We ever slandered anybody? Disobeying their parents. Oh, hands up if you've never disobeyed your parents. So I read these. Each one of them is like another arrow, piercing my heart again. It reminds me, I have no right whatsoever to judge other people and the community out there because I'm a sinner. I've committed so many of these things in this same list. I choose to focus on the ones that I haven't done and feel smug that I'm sitting in here not doing those things while other people are doing. But you can't separate out the list like that. We have to look at it as a whole and we say, do you know what? We are just as guilty. We are no more right in our living than anybody else. Like every human being, I sin. This passage is meant to remind us how God views sin. It is dark, and God hates it. He hates that sin. All sin is against God. All sin is about being in a wrong relationship in some way with God, and therefore it is wickedness. And I have to look at myself in the mirror and say, I practice wickedness. When I envy or get angry, or I join in gossip or I slander other people. Sin is a little bit like a well. See, we look at it and it kind of looks quite pretty. Have you ever seen those lovely wells, like wishing wells that they put places? They decorate and it all looks very pretty and it all looks very nice. But actually, when we look into it, do you know what? We see nothing but blackness and darkness. Anything against God, anything that is wickedness, anything that is not right with God, well, it's away from his light and it is dark. And our sin is dark. If we could look closer, if we could look further down into there, we'd see that actually it's not just dark. Do you know what? It's filthy. Grimy, it's dirty, it's muddy, and if you go down into there it sticks to you and you can't get out, and it is not as pretty as it first looked. And so we stand there and we look at that and we say, oh, I thank God that I'm not down in that well. I thank God that I'm not sucked down into that sin like everybody else. What happens if we look really closely at the water and the dirt down in the bottom of a well? What do we see? If you really look down into the bottom of a well, don't we see our own reflection? No, actually we see ourselves down there in that. We're not exempt the sin that we see in everybody else. We're not exempt the sin that we see in society around us that we find so easy to condemn. We have no place to judge others at all. And so we agree with those people who say to us, the world's gone mad. Yes, it has. You're right. And we see the problem. The Bible shows us what the problem is with the world. The problem is that the world is living away from God. It's not living in the way that he wants us to. But as we really look into what the Bible says, we begin to realize there's a shame that sticks to us. Actually, we contribute to this whole problem of the world going mad because we sin as well. How do we respond? What do we do about this? The answer actually isn't given really in the verses that we read today. We just have to go back a couple of verses and look at what we read last week. Verse 16. I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes. There is only one possible answer to the problem of the madness, the depravity, the wickedness of this world. And it is the gospel of grace. Our sin deserves death. Verse 32 tells us that. But by God's grace, we have salvation through faith in the gospel of Jesus Christ. When our faith is in him, we move from wickedness, being in a wrong relationship with God, into righteousness, being in a right relationship with him. Doesn't mean that our behaviour will always be absolutely right. There will still be things that we do, things that we say, things that we think which are wicked, but we move into a place where we are considered righteous by God because we're in a right relationship with him. Forgiven for the wickedness. What does this society need? What does the world need? This world that has gone mad and is full of depravity and horror and all the terrible things that we see. They don't need our judgment. They don't need our condemnation. They don't need us tutting and thinking that we're better. What this world needs right now is the gospel of God's grace and the salvation that can only be found through faith in Jesus Christ. That is what the community around us needs. Psalm 124 says, "Praise be to the Lord who has not let us be torn by their teeth. We have escaped like a bird out of the fowler's snare. The snare has been broken, and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." You know, when a bird or any other animal is caught in a snare, it can't get out. It's one of the cruelest forms of trap. And the more it struggles, the deeper that wire digs in and holds them tighter and tighter and tighter. And that's what sin is like. We can't get ourselves out. And the more we try to make ourselves righteous by our behaviour, the more sin grips us and holds us, and we can't get out. Like a bird caught in a snare, we need somebody to come from outside and rescue us. And when we came to God, seeking salvation in Jesus Christ, we were set free like a bird out of a snare. He cut that snare of sin and let us go. Think again about that well that represents sin. Imagine falling in and getting in that mud down at the bottom. Are you getting yourself out of there? We're not getting out of there on our own, any more than this guy could get himself out when he got stuck down a well. He needed salvation. There was no way that he could get himself out. He needed somebody to come and lift him out of that pit. That is what it's like when we are trapped in sin. We could not get ourselves out. We can take no pride in what we have done. We have to say it took God. It took God coming to us. When we accepted the gospel of Jesus Christ, God lifted us out of that snare. He drew us out of that well. He did it. He did the work, not us. Even the faith that we had to believe in the gospel was a gift from him. We can take no credit. And if we can take no credit, then we have no right to judge those who are in the same situation that we were when we were stuck in that way. All around us, behind every front door on this estate, behind every set of blank, zombified eyes in the city centre that are addled with spice, behind everybody laying in the park throwing up because they've drunk 3 litres of cider, behind everybody caught up in problems and sin and horror in this world, there is somebody who needs saving by God. They can't get themselves out of there. They need God to rescue them. And they will only be rescued. They will only have God save them if they hear about a God who really exists. They will only get that salvation if they hear, just as we once heard, of a God who made the heavens and the earth and everything in it. They're only going to get that salvation if they're reminded that their Creator God set ways of living, a right way to be, but that we've all failed and gone off and we are living in wickedness. They're only going to be saved if they're told that that same God sent his Son, Jesus Christ, to rescue them from that sin. That he died to pay the price of all the wickedness that we have ever lived. They're only going to receive that salvation if they are shown that they need to put their faith in that Jesus Christ and come to him in repentance. Somebody needs to share that with them just as somebody shared it with us. And they need to be shown that when we do that, when we put our faith in that Jesus Christ, that he will set us free. He will bring us into a right relationship with God. We will go from wickedness to righteousness in the true biblical meaning of those words. And we will be made right with God, not by our behaviour, but by the work of Jesus Christ on our behalf. That is the answer to all the horror and the problems and the depravity that we see around us. Yes, the world is mad. It needs the gospel of Jesus Christ.